Hello, everyone. Welcome to my Positive Life Answers podcast. I'm your podcast host and self-improvement expert, Dr. Marianne Mercer. You can call me Dr. Mary, as many people do. So, welcome to episodes Help Other People Become Optimistic, including your friends and children. You can help others become upbeat and optimistic, including your friends and children. And if you don't have children, you can make a positive effect on other people's children, your nieces, your nephews. So today I want to help you in helping others in your life become upbeat, hopeful, and optimistic. This is so important for you and them in moving ahead in your and their lives and not getting stuck in problems and setbacks that pop up in life. Some comment I recently received from a listener was that their friend is going through a difficult time and was part of the reason why she started listening to this podcast. So it occurred to me, we need to help people in our lives, children, adults, coworkers, and more, become more upbeat and hopeful. In my Positive Life Answers podcast, my goal is to help you transform the quality of your life and help you create the life you desire. The goal of my podcast is to help you make improvements and changes in practical and empowering ways. So let's create the best life ever for ourselves and for others in our lives that matter. The goal of this podcast is to help you make improvements and changes in practical and easy and empowering ways. If you are new and just discovered my podcast, a big welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad you found me. So don't forget to follow the podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Just hit that follow button on whatever platform that you're following me on now. And a big thank you for those who are continuing to listen to my podcast and supporting my podcast. Please don't keep me a secret and share with somebody who would benefit from these podcasts. Thank you for your email messages and questions. Many thanks to those who have contacted me to tell me that they are enjoying this podcast. So please don't be shy. Let me know. And that means a lot to me. So today's topic, help other people become optimistic, including your friends, children, and people you interact with daily in your lives. Many podcast listeners or workshop participants, or even people I work with on intensive coaching, made this kind of request. They say, optimism methods you show us are great and improve our lives. How can I help other people I love and care about become more optimistic and learn how to get through and solve their problems? And that can include children, spouse, family, friends, coworkers, nieces and nephews. This podcast will show you how to do that. Here's how a person becomes optimistic, upbeat, or pessimistic and upset. One day, as my husband and I walked down the street, we observed how people learn to become pessimistic or optimistic. A little kid was running incredibly fast down the sidewalk during our walk in the neighborhood. All of a sudden, they fell down. They fell down so hard, I thought they were going to break the concrete sidewalk. As they picked themselves up, the mother rushed to their side and frantically screamed, "Oh, my little darling, are you okay? Oh, I bet you broke something. Are you bleeding? I bet you're hurt. Where do you hurt? Are you okay? Oh my gosh." Just then, the mother almost burst into tears, and half a second later, her child began to burst into tears. A minute later, we saw another little kid running incredibly fast on the same sidewalk. All of a sudden, they fell really hard. The child picked themselves up, looked a little bit dazed from the fall. His mother ran up to him and said, "Oh, my darling, are you okay?" She, of course, checked on her child and then said, "You're fantastic. You're a great kid. You fell down, but I bet you're fine. You are okay, and I'm so proud of you. Here's a kiss to make things better." Just then, the mother smiled. A moment later, her child started smiling and laughing. The mother and the child hugged, and then they moved on with their lives. In this example, can you guess which child will grow up pessimistic and depressed? And can you predict which child will grow up happy, upbeat, confident, and optimistic? You might say, well, I didn't have an optimistic parent. Well, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And of course, you can't go back in time and make sure your parents acted like the second mother in the story that I just told you about. As you learned so far in my podcasts and in my books, you definitely can transform yourself into an optimistic, confident person. Now, let's turn to a glorious ability you possess, even if you don't realize it. You can possess the ability to help other people become more optimistic. You can do this with the people you love and deeply care about, including your children or your spouse or other people's children. and your nieces and nephews. And you can also lead the way for your work environment, helping your coworkers develop greater optimism. We touched upon that optimism in the workplace with our episode with Dr. Mercer. But here are more specific tips you can practice after learning about this today in this podcast. So listen up here. Your powerful influence on others is really important to realize. So you are an influence and you leave impressions on other people no matter who they are in your life. So why not become an optimistic role model? You help people develop greater optimism when you are a good role model who oozes optimism and happiness. Doing so requires you to use methods that I taught you about earlier in my podcast series and in our optimism book. So if you have a chance, go listen to episode 3 and 4 on some basic tips about how to be happy and optimistic. These are 60-second tips to instantly feel optimistic. You help people develop greater optimism when you are a superb role model who oozes happiness and optimism. Doing so, though, requires methods that I taught you earlier in my podcast series about instantly becoming optimistic, my 60-second technique. So if you are new to the podcast, please listen to episode 3 and 4. Also, you can get a copy of our Spontaneous Optimism books at our website, positivelifeanswers.com. And I just want to say at the end of this podcast for you new listeners, I will teach you a little bit about who I am and why you should listen to my podcast. But I'm going to put that at the end of the podcast so that the regular listeners don't have to sit through that again. But please stay tuned. Going back to how to be an optimistic role model. First, teach others through your own example. The key to your positive mind conditioning. And the key to positive mind condition is that you need to teach them and to yourself that you can only have one thought at a time in your mind. So most importantly, spread the word on this powerful yet seldom learned technique. You can only have one thought at a time in your mind. Let people see you focusing on that one thought at a time. And that one thought at a time is a positive, upbeat thought and feeling. So that's really important. You can choose how you think and feel. Choose those optimism techniques that we talked about and that we'll talk about here. When your child, coworker, spouse, and friends and others see you dwelling on positive items, they get a clear picture of how they can do likewise. When a problem comes up, focus on solutions. Second, show them your upbeat attitudes, and you can do this a number of ways. Most important of all, constantly do the following. Focus on solutions, not problems. And in everyone's life, problems pop up. Don't stay stuck in complaining. Acknowledge the situation, acknowledge your reactions. Don't get reactive by getting hysterical about it. And then move on, avoid complaining. After all, pessimistic and sad people dwell on complaining, and they don't focus on solutions to their problems. Happy, optimistic, healthy people focus on coming up with solutions and then carrying them out. Other upbeat attitudes you need to exhibit in your everyday actions include you showing others that you expect the best. You have a strong ambition to achieve what you want in your life. But you are flexible. You have to demonstrate flexible thinking to others, including admitting when you're not right on target or wrong and changing your mind when you discover better ways to do them. And also exhibit to them persistence at plugging away, working hard to get what you want. Third, use upbeat words. Words are hypnotic. We taught this earlier in our podcast series here. To do this, replace words that have negative connotations with words that evoke neutral or positive moods. For example, don't let your child, spouse, friends, nieces or nephews or coworkers hear you say negative words all the time. For example, avoid the word nervous and overwhelmed. Instead, focus on the more neutral or positive version of feeling nervous, overwhelmed, or hyper, such as, I feel concerned and challenged. Take the edge off of it because words will hypnotize you to feel emotionally upset and bring your mood down. Also, make sure you praise often, reward others' successes, and tactfully correct their shortcomings or problems. And we'll get into this CAP method that my co-author and I developed. Fourth, act cheerful. Remember, you feel whatever emotion you're acting at the moment. And this is crucial. For instance, to be an optimistic role model, you need to and want to act consistently upbeat. The easiest way to feel upbeat is to use a cheerful tone of voice. I know that sounds funny, but lots of research, and I'm a psychologist, and I've been doing this for over 2 decades, found that people feel whatever emotion they're acting. So if you want to feel happy, act happy. If you want to feel romantic, act romantic. However, I found the easiest way to cheer yourself up and others is to use an upbeat, happier tone of voice. It's quick, doesn't cost you a penny, and you start to feel good. And your cheerful vocal demeanor makes you a spectacular, easy role model. Fifth, keep your posture straight. So people feel whatever emotions they act, and this has been verified by research and in my experience of being a psychologist for over 2 decades. So remember, there is a mind-body connection. Early in my career and in college, I did much research utilizing biofeedback, and I demonstrated this mind-body connection over 2 decades ago. So what's the lesson here? Your posture reveals and reinforces your mood. So people who are depressed, pessimistic, or unhappy tend to slouch. Their heads and shoulders are turned down, and they take shallow breaths. They often walk slowly and in small steps. So, in contrast, upbeat and happier people use straight posture. They keep their heads, their back high, their shoulders out, and they take longer, more confident steps, and they breathe easily and freely. When you use straight posture, you exude optimism. When you use straight posture, you feel more empowered, more confident, and more optimistic. And that benefits you, your family members, friends, coworkers. Now let's look at consistent actions you can take. There are about 5 consistent actions of being an optimistic role model. Being a superb optimistic role model is uncomplicated. It boils down to you using 5 key actions. And you can try these, kind of trial and error, and see which ones work the best for you. So to be a good role model, consistently do the following actions. Now listen here. This is something you might have not heard before. So action number 1 you can do. Make your relationships fun. Many psychologists like myself incorrectly say that the most important component of a good relationship is communication. That's not the whole story. It misses the mark. As you know, a lot of awful relationship, including tons of communications. It's awful, destructive communications. So communication is not totally the key. It's only part of it. We repeatedly find that healthy relationships possess one key ingredient. My co-author, Dr. Michael Mercer, and I wrote a book about endless love, romance, and passion about relationships, and which makes the secrets for happy and long-lasting relationships. One key ingredient we found was fun. So think about it. All of your delightful, cherished relationships include having fun with those people. As my co-author, Dr. Michael Mercer, my co-author and my husband, who's also a psychologist, we like to say, when the fun goes out, the sun goes out. Your first action as an optimistic role model is to inject some fun into relating with important people in your life. An easy way to do that is to be cheerful. Use a cheerful tone of voice. Look at the bright side of things. Action number 2, you are a cheerleader. Imagine a person who helps you feel wonderful about what you do in your life and your successes. That person acts as your cheerleader. You savor the fuss your cheerleader makes over you. As a role model in helping others in your life, as this podcast is all about, you need to act like a cheerleader. And how do you do that? Well, easily. Anytime you can find some positive things that someone has done, praise them. Praise their successes. Their successes earn your praise, little or big. It doesn't have to be big all the time. Praise helps instill reinforcement of that behavior, those patterns, and their optimism. Your praise has to be, though, frequent, immediate, given directly to that person, and accompanied by kind of emotional pat on their back. I do this all the time with my nieces, nephews, and great-nephews. I tell them when they've done the simplest thing as having passed a test, having done some volunteer, whatever it is they do, I immediately say to them, that's wonderful. I am so proud of you. If you ask my family members, what does Aunt Marianne say to you? They'll say, she says, I am proud of you. And anytime I've ever said that, they have the smile on their face and it really sinks in. So remember, we can't all be heroes because somebody has to sit on the curb and clap as people go by in life. So that was a quote by Will Rogers. I love that. Action 3, show empathy, not sympathy for other people's feelings. People love and need to have their emotions listened to and understood. Superb role models do this with empathy and not sympathy. Empathy means that you show you understand their feelings, mood, and reactions. Do not use sympathy. Sympathy, doing so means you get entangled into their emotional feelings, reactions, their emotional webs, and you experience the same feelings as them. While okay to do that for a very short while, you get caught up in their feelings and you can't help them. Little children show sympathy when they cry while they watch other people cry. In contrast, mature adults and useful role models tend to empathize, not sympathize. So when people in your life feel a negative emotion, you provide a great role model when you do the following. Listen here. Show that you understand and care about their pain, but do not feel or take on their pain. You need to be that 2 feet on the ground to say that you understand and help them figure out what to do from that point on. So that leads into the next action, number 4, focusing on solutions and not complaining. As you've heard me say over and over, optimists solve while pessimistic people complain. As a role model, use this fact of optimistic life. Do not complain. Instead, show them that you constantly focus on turning your problems into opportunities or solutions. And we all get problems or challenges in your life. It's okay to feel the feelings. Don't get stuck in them. Let them pass. It frees up your energy to move on to the next step, which is finding out what you can do about something. Importantly, praise and reward your family members, friends, or coworkers each time they come up with a solution and come up with a plan to put those in actions. One great way to teach someone to focus on solution is this. Every time a person complains or says something like, I understand, that certainly seems like a challenge. What solutions could help you? Every time a person complains, say something like, I understand that certainly seems like a challenge. What solutions can help you? And of course, sometimes they'll say, I don't know. Just help them problem solving. When they say, I don't know, say, well, imagine what might be a good solution. Then calmly let them talk through their ideas. Praise them for all the solutions that come up and don't criticize them. And we're going to get into that right now. That's really important. The point is that you provide a live, real example of how a cheerful, upbeat, happy person expects them to come out on top. Eventually, your confidence in them will become contagious. They will catch it from you. So let's get into what to say, which is action number 5 actually. So listen here. Tactfully correct a person using what we call the CAP method. And the CAP method is what it is. So using the CAP method, just because you want to be a fun, praising, empathetic, solution-focused role model does not mean you should avoid correcting someone or telling them they're wrong. At some point you have to. But the key is to put a proverb I learned a long time ago. And this proverb says, a car can go as fast on square wheels as it can go on round wheels. However, the difference is that on round wheels, the ride is much smoother. And this is a French proverb, and I love that idea. Correct people diplomatically using the round wheels, not hitting them between the eyes using square wheels, which is criticizing them. The key point to remember here is to focus on their incorrect and not useful actions or behavior. Do not attribute their missteps or problems to a personality or mental flaw. For example, you might say, it didn't work out when you did X, Y, and Z actions. Do not say, you're too lazy and dumb to do that. No, that's a no-no. Implore the person to come up with solutions or improved ways to do things, and then praise their solutions. All right, let's review that again. I call this the 3-step CAP method. So step number 1, comment on the person's actions, not personality or brain power. For example, it did not work when you did X, Y, Z. Step 2, ask the person for possible solutions. Example, how could you handle that next time? How can you handle that more efficiently next time? And in 3P, praise reasonable solutions the person is telling you. For example, you came up with a great solution. Remember, correction does much, but encouragement does more. If you want to raise optimistic children or influence the children, nieces, and nephews in your life or other people's children, even adults, remember the importance of turning them into optimists. One of the most profound influences someone can exert to help a child become optimistic is that, after all, an upbeat approach to living helps a child develop into a healthy, prosperous, and happy adult. Isn't that what we want for everyone in their life? If you're not a parent, you can still use these methods. Apply these methods to your nephew, nieces, students, or other children and adults. You can make a very profound difference in their lives. Importantly, keep in mind that other people, children or adults, can catch your emotions, and children can catch their parents' emotions. For example, university researchers, and in my research on optimism for my book, Spontaneous Optimism, Proven Strategies for Health, Prosperity, and Happiness, that you can get on my website, we have all found that the links between parents' emotional maturity and their child's successes in everyday life is strong. Sure enough, emotionally mature parents raise children who perform better in school and in particular in life. Those children compared to emotionally immature or unstable parents do better academically, behaviorally, emotionally, and socially. Emotional stable parents produce dream children. Emotionally unstable parents and households create nightmare children. Yes, it's important to really think about that. Since children and adults catch parents or other adults' emotions, you may well ask how that occurs. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania says, children learn from their parents' explanatory style, meaning how they explain lives and their problems to them. In summary and in general, optimistic parents explain difficulties in a way that children learn that problems or crises can be solved and only concern this specific difficulty and not a lot of their other problems. On the other hand, pessimistic parents employ a much different way to explain difficulties that pop up. Their explanation of problems teaches their children that setbacks are not fixable, that they're permanent and will not change, and to expect that they're going to happen over and over again. So that is, optimistic parents teach children that everything in life can be handled. In contrast, pessimistic, depressed, upset parents teach that the sky is really falling. Think about what you want to leave your impression on other people as, helpful or not helpful. And that's not all. All parents want their children to learn well. So of course, intelligence gives children the ability to learn. Beyond that, optimistic children are more likely to be emotionally ready to absorb material that they learn. So it's really important that you instill confidence in children's life. First, children catch optimism traits of their parents. Optimism teaches and helps the child do better in school. Both children and parents find that very rewarding. Academic successes rewards the child's belief that he or she has real reasons to feel confident, cooperative, and in control. In a classic research and experiment with high achievers confirmed these initial thoughts. Harvard psychologists found that parents of high achieving kids exhibit a can-do quality or attitude. They are open-minded, expect the best, and they encourage and involve themselves in homework. So now let's talk about how you can instill optimism in the people around you, and if you have a child, in their lives. Instilling optimism in your child and individuals in your lives. So as promised, I will show you how to raise optimistic children and make a really important impact on adults. To do this, recommend the following 5 actions of an optimistic role model. Action 1, have fun with your children. We have appeared on many talk shows, and one show dealt with mother-daughter relationship. It featured 6 mothers and their daughters. Some of them shared delightful relationships, while other ones were just riddled with fighting and hurtful feelings. So before the show, my co-author and I, Dr. Michael Mercer, and I talked privately with the mothers and daughters. One question we asked them was, what is the most striking thing about your relationship? That phrase could have been taken in either a positive or negative light, and the answers these mothers gave proved very revealing. The mothers and daughters who bickered a lot launched into a myriad of disagreements and grudges. On the other hand, mothers and daughters who cherished being around each other said the same thing, that the most striking ingredient in their relationship was fun, and that they enjoyed each other. During the show, those gave us some psychological commentary on a number of topics, but we pointed out that fun, and not just communication, is a primary trait of healthy, enjoyable mother-daughter relationships in that TV show. The lousy mother-daughter and mother-child relationships had tons of communications. However, they consistently communicated discord, disgust, and discomfort with each other. In contrast, the mother-child successful and upbeat relationship had an aura of fun. They tremendously enjoyed doing activities together. They focused on their commonalities and not their differences. They were non-judgmental toward each other, in other words. So why is fun a crucial ingredient in raising and having healthy relationships and children? It's easier to influence your child if your child enjoys being with you. You will have an uphill battle if your child considers you a chore to be near. So sit down with your child. Make a list of activities both you and your child would enjoy doing together, and jointly plan when you can make some time to do each one and carry that out. You are laying the seeds for having a reference point of good interactions with each other. Action number 2, you are your child's cheerleader. Think back when you were a child. Remember a time when you came home feeling proud of something you did at school, when you walked into your home and proudly announced your big accomplishments, and your parents oohed and awed and made a fuss over you. Just remember how wonderful you felt. You felt on top of the world. And what did your parents do that made you feel ultra special? They acted like your cheerleaders with you, and you loved it. Children need lots of positive remarks, praise, and compliments from their parents and other family members. These factors greatly influence their emotional and their attitude that they develop. When you act as their cheerleader, you start a magnificent chain reaction. And as I said before, as an aunt, I always focused on what they can turn around their problems to. I also recall fondly a situation where my nephew was having a little difficult time in high school, and he was feeling discouraged and saying, this is all screwed up, this is going to last forever. And I turned and told him what I'm about to tell you. Problems don't last forever, and this too will pass. So let's focus on what you can do to make things turn around. And several months after that, my nephew shared that really helped him change his focus, that things won't last forever. This is not how his life is going to be in the future. It empowered him, and I feel very proud as an aunt to share that with you. Second, just a reminder, your cheerleading serves as a great example that they can follow. Remember, optimists live to cheer, and pessimists or upset people live to boo or tear you down. When your child or someone else's child, as an important aunt or uncle, feels the warmth and enthusiasm of your cheering, they learn how to act. And sooner or later, they'll see another child do something, and then your child will compliment and help that child. Then that child will be more like your child. Children with friends have a good reason to feel comfortable interacting. Children with friends have good reason to feel comfortable interacting. That gives your child even more reason to feel optimistic, confident, and happy. So think up some ways that you can become your child's, your nieces or nephews, or your friends' children. Think about situations and think about each time that they feel proud that they tell you something and what you can do to cheer them on. So make a mental list of that right now. So action number 3, show your child or other people's children or your family members understanding and love. Perhaps the most important thing you can do as a role model is to make sure they know you feel unconditional love for them. This means that you love them no matter what happens. Just as I gave an example about talking to my nephew, I did not critique him. I showed him unconditional love and felt his pain, but didn't stay stuck there and helped him move on. So you may not feel like some of their actions or behaviors are good. However, an outstanding parent and so on always loves the child as a person. Here are some ways you can make sure your child knows you love them or other people in your life. Frequently say, I love you to them. Your voice must convey how much you mean it. Also make sure your actions say this too. Give them uninterrupted attention. So spend some time with them. Make sure that when you're with them, listen while they tell you about their activities and feelings. Empathize with their emotions. Look at them saying, I'm with you and you're important to me. In fact, a common trait of emotionally disturbed or upset individuals is the feeling that they were not totally loved by at least one person in their lives. Their behaviors and uneasy feelings flow from such cravings of attention and love. Interestingly, many years ago, I worked with teenagers in a psychiatric hospital. Early in my career, and for many years after that, I discovered how this problem consumed many troubled teenagers. Many times in adolescence, unhappiness and depression was directly related to feeling unloved or lacking love and support from their parents. They did not have structure or a stable home environment as well. Often the teenagers' annoying acting out antics were a way to get attention, to get help, and to heal their emotional wounds. Sometimes you just need to sit and let them express their feelings. You need to listen without judgment. The reason why I did so well in helping families of teenagers that were having problems and also at that point, in a hospital for their behaviors, was that I sat without criticizing and judging them, demonstrating unconditional love and listening to what they had to say. And those teenagers had a lot on their mind. And at that point, I was the first person to listen to them, not scream and interrupt them. And I taught their parents how to do that. And guess what happened? Things got resolved. Their situations all improved. But keep in mind here that you don't always want them to be nonstop whining and complaining. Everyone hits bumps and potholes on the road of life. Children hit bumps at school, at home, and in the neighborhood, and with other kids and more. So at those times, your heart goes out to your child. You wish they didn't feel all this, but to become an optimistic role model, you must muster up your courage to give empathy, but not sympathy, to your child, meaning I understand and care about your pain. I'm not going to feel and get stuck there. I'm going to be your grounding, your role model for you. Remember, optimistic people empathize. Pessimistic people sympathize and get stuck in those feelings. So after all, it's hard to feel optimistic if the chills and spills of someone else's life phrase and tatters your feelings. So when a child or adult is upset, the best prescription is a strong dose of empathy. First, listen carefully to their feelings. People love to be listened to. Then second, put their emotions into words in a very caring way. Labeling emotions is a learned skill. Your child or other adults need to learn it from you. Sometimes just labeling an uncomfortable emotion has a healing effect. Not in a judgmental way, but a way to put into words. You may say something like this, especially to children. When that kid did that to you, you felt embarrassed. Your child's upset feeling may lessen just by learning from you that horrible emotion has a name. It's called feeling embarrassed. They feel understood, and then you can help them move ahead, which is action 4. Show your kids how to focus on resolving situations. Remember, children learn best by seeing what you do, not by what you tell them. So you can tell them things. However, if you don't practice it in your life, you're not going to be an optimistic role model. As a role model, you need to help your child or whoever else in your life catch your optimistic, upbeat way of thinking. The hallmark is to focus on solutions rather than complaining all the time. Yes, complain, feel emotion, let it pass as you focus on and spend more energy on resolving the problem. So when you encounter the problem, setback, or crisis, make sure your child sees you immediately snap into a problem-solving mode and don't stay stuck in complaining and moaning about your predicament. It reminds me of a story to share with you. This is beautifully illustrated by a child of one of our friends. We dropped by our friend's house. Just as we stopped by, they were sweeping the floor with an electric broom. The electric broom kind of conked out and would not work. Our friend turned to their child and said calmly, "The electric broom broke. How can we sweep the floor?" And the child stood there and pondered the question for a moment. And then with a big smile, they said, "Let's use a regular broom." Then the child ran into the closet, grabbed a couple brooms and a dustpan, handed one to the father, one to the mother, and said, "Let's sweep the floor together." When they finished, the little problem solver proudly said to their parent, "Do you need my advice on anything else?" And that was just an amazing moment. As I mentioned earlier, psychologists have found high-achieving children often come from families that encourage their children to problem solve. Showering praise was also a very important part of that, as we just talked about. Then action number 5, CAP. We talked about this earlier today, CAP. CAP, CAP correcting your child. So briefly, 3-step method is important. So number 1, C. C means comment on your child's actions or anyone else's, and do not accuse them of intellectual or personality imperfections. Next, A. Ask them to problem solve how to do much better in the future. And then lastly, P. Praise them for coming up with a viable solution. So if it's a child who earns a low grade on an exam, for example, use CAP by doing the following. 1, comment on the actions. Oh, you earned a C- on this exam. Number 2, ask for a solution, saying, what else can you do to earn a better grade on the next exam? And C, as you listen to their explanations or solutions, P, praise them. After hearing a good solution, say, that's a great idea, and you can do that next time. CAP method really helps you implement the ingredients of optimism. So very importantly, and you can do this with your coworkers, adult family members, and friends. So think about that for next time you encounter these problems. And adults in the workplace using CAP, tell the person exactly what action you want every time that person deals with you. Do not comment on their personality. Do not comment and say what you don't want. So do not say, I could work with you better if you stop screaming like a crazed hysterical maniac. But do say, I can work with you better if you speak to me in a calm, focused tone of voice that conveys your respect for both of us. Do not say, I could work with you better if you weren't such a disorganized, messy person. But do say, I can work with you better if you handed me a list of exactly what you want me to do. So in conclusion, these tips and techniques are easy to use in your life. There's no excuse not to. Just practice them. Create a positive domino effect in your life. So let me know how this lesson I'm teaching you today lands with you. If you have any questions about it, feel free to email me directly at Dr. Mercer, that's DrMercer, at Positive Life Answers, with an S at the end of answers.com. That's Dr. Mercer at PositiveLifeAnswers.com. Feel free to email me your questions and comments. And you could also go to the website, PositiveLifeAnswers.com, and just use the Contact Us form. And I'll respond to your questions and comments privately or during my podcast. Go to PositiveLifeAnswers.com if you'd like to order our Spontaneous Optimism or Bouncing Back book in our online store. If you are stuck and need more help on these topics, you can contact me about my unique, patented, intensive coaching sessions and packages. So please make sure you email that to me and I can send you more material. So let me know if you're ready to take a leap into the path of changing and improving your life. I can also speak at your organization and conferences on creating a happy and optimistic and productive workplace, or 60-second techniques on how to feel optimistic and happy in your life. So if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, please use this month to leave your 5-star ratings and comments on the podcast app that you're using. Specifically, Apple, Spotify allow you to leave your comments and your 5-star rating. Not all podcast platforms do, so check the one you're using. And I greatly appreciate that to help grow this show. And as promised from the newbies and new people listening to my podcast, why should you tune into my podcast? Well, I'm Dr. Marianne Mercer. I'm an author, speaker, psychologist for over 2 decades, intensive coaching co-creator. I created my methods with my co-author and husband, Dr. Michael Mercer. We have used our intensive coaching for many years to transform people's life. And I had worked as a psychologist in a private practice in the hospital setting many years before that. We co-authored many books, including Spontaneous Optimism and other self-improvement books. My newest book is called Bouncing Back from Difficult Times. My background training also includes the study and practice on healing and the mind-body connection, such as biofeedback. I'm a certified awakening dynamics practitioner, a theta healing practitioner, and a movement feedback expert. My unique background and experience give you the tools and the edge you need to improve your life. You may have seen me on TV or heard me on the radio before these podcasts. I've appeared on TV shows, including a couple times on Oprah, Home and Family, Crick and Chase, and more. And I've been quoted in many publications such as Self, Medium, Fitness, Health, Martha Stewart's, Fitbit, and Redbook. And again, I deliver speeches and workshops And I co-founded the self-improvement website, PositiveLifeAnswers.com. So if you're new, go to PositiveLifeAnswers.com and sign up for my free Positive Life Answers newsletter. When you sign up, you'll receive a free guide called Quick Tips to Become More Upbeat and Optimistic. Also, remember to follow us on our Facebook page, simply called Positive Life Answers. I appreciate that and hope this background information to my new listeners gives you a better sense of why you should listen to my podcast and how I can help you. A note to my listeners, my podcast aims to provide useful information to my listeners. It's published with the understanding that your host, Dr. Mercer, is not engaged in rendering professional services such as counseling or therapy through the contents or comments of this podcast. If professional services is needed and sought by the listeners, such as counseling, therapy, or medical advice, then the listener is responsible for seeking the services of a competent professional. So contact your local psychological association or contact your primary care doctor for referrals to therapists in your area. So thank you for listening and make it a fantastic week. Positively, Dr. Mary.